Evan did not remember the moment of impact. He only remembered the sound. A long tearing scream of metal, the wild spin of stars outside his cockpit window, and then darkness like a heavy door closing. When he opened his eyes again, the world was tilted and broken. Smoke filled the air. Sparks jumped from cut wires. His ship, once clean and silver, now looked like a torn can. For a moment he did not move. He listened. No engine. No radio signal. No friendly voice in his ear. Only wind. Pain slowly returned to him like a late guest. His shoulder hurt. His ribs hurt. His head felt heavy, but he was alive. He checked his suit. Oxygen low but stable. He pulled himself free from the broken seat and stepped onto the planet's ground for the first time. The sky was a strange color, soft purple with 2 moons. Tall glass towers stood in the distance. It was not a wild world. It was a built world. A living world. He called on his radio again. Static answered him. His ship was dead. His rescue beacon blinked, but he did not know if anyone would ever see it. Space was huge, and he was only one small human lost inside it. Evan took a slow breath. Panic tried to climb into his chest, but he pushed it back down. He was a pilot. He had trained for fear. He would move. He would survive. He started walking toward the city. The closer he walked, the stranger the silence felt. A city should have sound. Cars, voices, machines, life. But this city sounded like a museum at night. Streets were clean. Doors were open. Lights worked. But no one stood outside. He felt eyes. Before he saw faces. At the end of one street, a small child stared at him from behind a metal post. She had wide eyes and braided hair. Then she ran. Doors opened. Windows slid back. Heads peeked out. One woman, then another. Then dozens. They were everywhere now, looking at him with the same shocked face. He noticed something shocking in return. There were no men, not one in the street. Not one voice deeper than his own echo. Every face was a woman's face. Every whisper was a woman's whisper. His heart jumped. He turned in a slow circle, searching without thinking. Nothing. Only women, young and old, frozen like statues staring at him. He raised one hand slowly in peace. "Hello," he said. His voice broke the strange air. The women did not answer at first. Some gasped, some pointed. Some covered their mouths like they were looking at a ghost. Drones appeared in the sky with glowing blue eyes of metal, scanning him from head to boots. A symbol flashed on nearby. Walls, repeated again and again in bright letters he did not understand. Then a small machine clicked at his ear, and a translator hissed to life. The city's whispers suddenly gained meaning. They were saying one phrase, over and over, from every direction. Public property. Evan felt cold, though the air was warm. The words rolled through the crowd like a wave. Public property. Public property. The drones circled lower, shining light on him, humming like insects around prey. A group of armored guards appeared from the center of the city. All women, tall, trained, strong. They looked at him not with surprise, but with decision, as if an old rule inside them had suddenly come alive. One guard stepped forward and spoke in a clear voice. "A man," she said, like the word itself, "was dangerous. He lives." The crowd leaned closer. Some curious, some excited, some with a hunger he did not understand. He took one step back. The guards took 3 steps forward. Evan finally spoke, his voice steady but tight. "I am not property," he said. But his words fell into a world that did not agree with him. The wall screens flashed brighter, the drones beeped. The guards reached out as if he was a lost tool finally found. He looked around the city of glass and light, at hundreds of eyes, locked onto him, and felt a truth pressing down on him like a storm. He had crashed on a planet with no men. And every woman here believed the same thing. He did not belong to himself. They did not hurt him. That was the first surprise. The guards formed a circle around Evan, but their hands were careful, almost gentle. They looked at him as people look at a rare animal, valuable, fragile, and dangerous at the same time. A floating platform came humming through the air, smooth and white like bone. They guided him onto it, and it carried him through the city while crowds followed at a distance. He saw the city better now. Tall bridges hung in the sky, like glass ribbons. Gardens climbed the sides of buildings. Giant screens showed warnings, laws, and symbols he still did not fully understand. Everywhere he looked, there were only women working, leading, watching him with wide, searching eyes. The platform stopped before a tall hall of black stone. Inside was silence again, but it was a heavy silence, the kind that belongs to important rooms where big words change lives. A long table stretched across the center. Around it sat older women with silver bands on their arms and deep lines on their faces. Their eyes were calm, trained by power. A translator drone floated beside Evan, so he could understand every word. The oldest woman spoke first. "You are male," she said. Evan nodded slowly. "Yes, I am human. My name is Evan." The hall filled with murmurs. Names were not the important part to them. The important part was the first word she had said. "Male," the oldest woman continued, voice steady as stone. "Men died on this planet more than 100 years ago. A sickness took them. There are none left. Not one in any city, not one in any village. We believe the last male died a generation ago." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Yet here you stand." Another council member leaned forward. "Our law says any male belongs to the state. He is public property, protected by all, controlled by the council, used for the needs of the world." The words were spoken like the weather, simple fact, cold fact. Evan felt anger flare for the first time since the crash. Not loud anger. Deep anger. He kept his voice calm. "I am not property," he said again. "I belong to myself." The room did not change. It was like speaking to a mountain and asking it to move. One woman explained, as if speaking to a child, "You are rare. You are needed. A single male is powerful for survival. Your choices are smaller than the needs of the world." Another added, "A long time ago, people fought about this. Freedom, rights, control. After the last war, the law was made. It has kept peace. No one owns you privately. So everyone owns you together." Evan almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it felt unreal. "So you are saying," he replied softly, "that because you made a law, I am not a person?" The oldest woman did not blink. "We are saying the world cannot risk you. You will live under watch. You will work where we decide. You will not leave. You will not choose partners. The council will choose. That is the law that holds our world steady." He looked around the room at all the serious faces, at the order and logic they believed in, and he suddenly understood something important. They did not think they were cruel. They thought they were right. A guard placed a light metal band near his wrist. It did not hurt. It only hummed. A tracker. A rule on his skin. He pulled his hand away. "No," Evan said, and there was steel in that one word. The guards tensed. The council watched closely. He did not shout. He did not fight. He simply stood as a person stands when he knows who he is. "You lost your men," he said. "You lost balance. You built cages and called them safety. I will help if I can. I will work with you. I will repair. I will teach. But I will do it as a free person, not as a tool." The oldest woman studied him for a long moment, like she was measuring a storm cloud. "You will learn," she said quietly. "All males learn." Two doors opened behind him. For a second, Evan thought they were taking him to a cell. Instead, something unexpected happened. A younger council member stood up. Her voice shook but stayed strong. "The law is old," she said. "The world is different." Now the room stiffened. Eyes turned sharp. She looked at Evan, not as property, not as prize, but as someone equal standing in fire. "We cannot pretend he is not a person," she said. A crack had appeared in the stone, not broken yet, but there. The guards led Evan away to a guarded residence overlooking the great city, not a prison, but not freedom either. He stood at the high window and watched the two moons rise over the towers. He was alone on a world that thought it owned him, but they did not know something powerful yet. They had found a man. They had not yet met humanity. Night came softly over the city, like dark silk falling from the sky. Two moons glowed above the towers, and long shadows crossed the streets below Evan's window. The room they gave him was beautiful but wrong. It had soft lights, clean water, warm food, and locked doors. A kind prison was still a prison. Guards stood outside like quiet statues. Drones floated near the balcony. Every movement he made was watched. He could feel the weight of the law around him, even when no one spoke. He was not trusted to walk alone. He was not trusted to choose. He sat on the floor and thought running would be hard. Obeying would break him. He looked at the small metal band on his wrist. It shone faintly, humming with quiet power. A tracker. A reminder. A collar without a chain. He whispered to himself, "I am not property." And the words gave him strength again. A soft knock came at the door. It did not sound like a guard's knock. It sounded nervous, careful, human. The door slid open a little, just enough for a face to appear. A woman with short dark hair and worried eyes looked in. She was not a soldier. She was young, maybe only a little younger than Evan. She quickly stepped inside and closed the door behind her. "Do not speak loud," she said. He stared at her, ready to call the guards if this was a trick. But then he saw her hands shaking. Not from fear of him, but fear for him. "My name is Lyra," she whispered, "and I am not with the council." She reached into her coat and pulled out a small device. She pressed it to the metal band on his wrist. It buzzed, glowed, then went silent. "Tracker off," she said. "Only for a short time. We must move fast." Evan stood slowly, confused but hopeful. "Why are you helping, Emmy?" he asked. Lyra looked at him with sad eyes. "Because you are not a thing, and because the council lies." Those words changed everything. She led him through hidden service corridors behind walls and floors. They moved past pipes and quiet machines, away from bright halls and into places where dust lived. Twice they heard guards walk past. Twice they waited in silence while Evan's heart beat like drums. They reached an old maintenance door. It slid open to the outside world. Cold wind touched his face. For the first time since his crash, he was outside without guards. Below them stretched the lower city. It was not shiny like the towers. It was worn, real, alive. Markets, small homes, narrow streets, and people looking tired but strong. And yes, only women here too. Lyra spoke as they walked. "The plague did not only take men," she said quietly. "It took trust. When the last war ended and fear ruled, leaders made the law. They said males must belong to the state for the safety of all. Many accepted. Some did not." She pointed to the city below. "We are the ones who did not." They reached a hidden door in the side of an old warehouse. It opened to reveal a group of women, inside farmers, engineers, students, workers, all different, all watching Evan with wide eyes. But they did not stare at him like property. They stared at him like hope. And like responsibility. An older mechanic stepped forward, wiping oil from her hands. "We are the free circle," she said. "We believe every person owns themselves, man or woman." They showed him old data, files. The truth was worse than anyone had said. The sickness that killed the men had once had a cure half complete. almost ready, but the council stopped the work. They had feared the return of old systems, old power, old mistakes. They believed a world of only women was safer, simpler, easier to control. So they let half the world die. Evan's hands tightened. They had not only lost men, they had chosen to live without them. He looked at the Free Circle rebels and saw courage in their faces. They had lived under the same law, but they refused to bow to it. They fixed broken farms. They helped the poor. They read Forbidden's history. They carried secrets in silence. Lyra looked at him firmly. The council will come for you again. They will not stop. To them you are a law, not a life. Evan nodded slowly. But I am more than what they wrote on paper, he said. I am human. The group smiled softly. For the first time since his crash, Evan did not feel alone. Fear was still there, but it shared space with something new. Purpose. Outside, sirens began to cry in the distance. Drones lit the sky like cold stars. The council had learned he was gone. The chase had already begun. Evan took a deep breath. He was done being quiet. He was done being owned. They thought they had found a rare body. Instead, they had awakened a free mind, and a free mind was far more dangerous. Evan did not sleep that night. The city outside was no longer quiet. Sirens rose and fell like the breath of a huge metal beast. Drones crossed the sky in hard lines of blue light. The council was searching, wide and angry. Somewhere up in the shining towers, rules were being sharpened like knives. The Free Circle moved fast. They gave Evan plain clothing, simple boots, and a hood to hide his face. Not because they were ashamed of him, but because even one glimpse of him could cause chaos in the streets. To the council, he was a law walking on legs. To many citizens, he was a myth made real. To himself, he was only human, but a human whose choices now mattered. They traveled underground first, through old tunnels from forgotten train systems. Dust lay thick on the floors. Wires hung loose from cracked ceilings. The city above had grown beautiful, but its bones were old and tired. Lyra walked ahead with a small light in her hand. We cannot fight the whole council, she said softly. But we can show the world the truth. We can show them what they were not allowed to see. Evan did not yet know what she meant. The tunnels opened onto the outskirts of the city. Wind rushed in, sharp and cool. For the first time he saw the planet beyond the towers clearly. Vast. Plains stretched to dark mountains. Old farms rested in broken lines. Machines stood silent, rusted, like giants who had fallen asleep and never woke again. The planet was beautiful. The planet was also tired. They reached a ruined farming zone. Metal arms of harvest machines were twisted. Water pumps were cracked. Long dry fields waited like empty hands. Only a few women worked here, and they looked up in surprise as the group approached. They stared at Evan, but not with greed. They stared with questions in their eyes. A small, boyish-looking girl asked in a whisper, "Is it true, a real man?" Lyra nodded gently, but did not let them crowd him. This place was different from the city. Life here was harder than rules. Hunger did not care about law. Broken machines did not bow to councils. An older farmer sighed as she touched a dead pump. "We asked the council for help," she said. "They told us to wait. We have been waiting for years." Evan stepped forward without thinking, his pilot training and engineer's mind waking like muscles remembering old work. He knelt by the machine and opened a panel. Wires were burned. Filters blocked. The problem was simple, painfully simple. Nobody had fixed it because nobody had been allowed to learn how. The council controlled tools as tightly as they controlled men. Evan worked with calm hands. He showed the women how to clean the filter, how to reattach the line, how to seal. The leak. Water burst out in a shining arc and fell back into the earth, darkening the dry soil. The women gasped and laughed. Some began to cry softly because their fields would live again. The news spread from mouth to mouth faster than drones could fly. Not, "A man is here," but, "The man helped us. He taught us. He did not ask to own us. He did not demand anything. He just fixed what we were told could not be fixed." For the first time, Evan felt something shift in the air of this world. He was no longer a symbol of control. He was becoming a symbol of choice. They traveled from village to village. He repaired cooling units, water lines, old engines. He taught children how to hold tools and not be afraid of them. He worked beside them, hands dirty, face tired, heart steady. Everywhere they went, the same truth lived in the same tired eyes. This planet had been surviving, not living. The council spoke of peace and order. But peace without freedom had slowly turned into silence. Order without growth had turned into decay. One night they camped under the open sky. The two moons hung like silver lanterns above them. Fires burned low. Wind moved through dry grass with soft voices. Lyra sat beside Evan. "Do you see it now?" she asked gently. He nodded. "This world is on the edge," he said. "Not because there are no men, but because people were told to stop thinking for themselves." She smiled sadly. "The council said control would keep us safe, but control also keeps us small." Evan looked back toward the shining towers of the distant city. "They believe they must own me to save the world," he said quietly. "But the world is breaking, not because they lack a man, but because they forgot what freedom feels like." In the distance, new lights rose into the sky search ships. The council had found their trail again. Lyra stood. "They will call you danger," she said. "They will say you make people question too much." Evan stood too, his eyes calm. "Good," he answered softly. The chase was not over. The fight had not yet begun. But the planet was waking up, piece by piece, village by village. And as the wind moved across the fields and old machines came back to life, a simple truth spread quietly like fire in dry grass. A free mind had arrived. And the world could feel it. Morning arrived without peace. A strange red light flickered across the sky, brighter than dawn and colder than fire. Birds fled in crooked lines. Ground vibrated softly, then stronger, as if the planet itself was holding back a shout. Evan woke first. He had learned to listen to danger before it showed its teeth. He stood on the hill and saw it. Far beyond the fields, near the edge of the city, a huge power tower was shaking. Blue energy crackled around it in wild rings. The tower fed half the planet's grid. If it failed, lights would die, water systems would stop, hospitals would darken. And if it exploded, the land around it would burn for miles. The council had built it to look perfect. They had never planned what to do when it broke. Lyra ran up beside him. "The stabilization core is failing," she said. "They shut many engineers out of the system. Only council teams are allowed to control it." Evan saw the fear in her voice more than in her face. He did not waste time asking permission. "We go now," he said. They took an old cargo carrier that rattled and coughed like a tired animal. Wind whipped at them as they flew low. Sirens wailed in the distance. Council patrols streaked across the sky in tight formations, not watching for rebels this time, but racing toward the same danger. The power tower grew larger and more terrible. Its frame glowed as if metal had learned how to sweat. Bolts of blue lightning snapped outward and died in the air. Waves of heat rolled from it, burning the grass below into black lines. Women workers stood nearby, frozen with fear but still at their posts, because duty was stronger than panic. Evan jumped from the carrier before it landed. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't argue about laws. He simply yelled, voice sharp. As command, "Where is the control room?" They pointed. The control room was chaos. Screens flashed warnings in red. Automated voices repeated the same cold sentence. "System failure imminent. Council engineers stood there, brilliant but trapped by rules. They had studied only what they were allowed to study. The system was failing in ways they had never been permitted to imagine. An older chief engineer turned to Evan, shock in her eyes. "You cannot be here." "I am," he said simply. "Show me the core map." Authority lived in his voice. Not the authority of law, the authority of someone who had been in burning ships and broken worlds before. Someone who knew that talking too long could kill people. She hesitated one breath too long. The tower groaned. Lyra stepped forward. "Let him work." That small sentence cracked the room open. They showed him the map. Evan's mind became a storm of calm thinking. He saw the breaks, the overloads, the loop of bad code forcing the power flow into a death spiral. It was not evil design. It was design made by people who controlled knowledge too tightly to let it grow. He moved quickly, calling out steps. Reroute the auxiliary channels. Open vent gates 3 and 7. No, ignore the lockdown orders. They'll trap the surge. Manual override here. The engineers obeyed. Not because he was male. Not because of legends. But because confidence and clarity are powerful forces. Some hands shook at first. Then they steadied. Knowledge returned to bodies that had been trained not to trust themselves. The tower screamed. A blast of light shot up through the clouds. For a second, Evan thought they were too late. Heat pushed him back. Screens went dark. A smell like storms and metal filled the air. Then, the shaking stopped. The red warnings faded. Systems returned one by one, like lights waking in a sleeping city. Energy balanced. Power flowed smooth again. The world did not burn. Silence filled the room. Then cheers rose like thunder from outside. Workers hugged each other. Some collapsed to their knees, laughing and crying all at once. Patrol ships hovered in confused relief. The tower stood scarred, but alive. The chief engineer looked at Evan, truly seeing him now. "You saved us," she said. He shook his head. "We saved us," he answered. "Because you were brave enough to think for yourselves." The door burst open. Council guards flooded in. But this time, no one stepped away from Evan. The engineers stood with him. Workers gathered at the entrance. Lyra moved beside him, chin lifted. The guards raised their hands but found that the room was already united in quiet defiance. The oldest guard lowered her weapon first. She had seen something break today, and something heal. Rumors would spread again, faster than law could chase them. The man had not conquered the tower. He had not commanded people. He had trusted them. To be strong, that was the dangerous part. Not that a man had returned, but that people had remembered their own power. As the sun finally broke through the storm clouds, lighting the tower and the fields beyond, one truth settled over the planet like new dawn. Humanity was not a gender, not a law, not a cage. It was courage and choice and the simple stubborn refusal to give up when everything was falling apart. And that force had woken up again. The tower crisis did not end the fight. It changed it. By evening, the whole planet seemed to be made of whispers. Messages ran from farm to city, from home to home, like birds with bright wings. People spoke softly at first, then louder. Not only about the tower, not only about Evan, but about freedom. The council felt the ground moving under their feet. So they acted. They ordered a great assembly, something used only during wars and disasters. Every district sent people to the central plaza, thousands upon thousands gathered under the twin moons. Huge screens shone across the sky. Drones hummed overhead like watchful insects. At the center of the plaza stood a tall speaking platform. Guards led Evan there. They did not drag him this time. They did not bind his hands. But the circle around him was tight, and their faces were hard. The law had not broken, yet it was only shaking. Lyra walked beside him and whispered, will try to make you a symbol again, for control or for fear. Be a person instead. He nodded. He would. The High Council appeared on the platform first. The oldest woman raised her arms and the huge plaza fell silent. Her voice was strong, trained by years of command. "Citizens," she said, "our world stands on a knife edge. Old fears walk again. An outsider challenges our laws. He risks order. He risks peace." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some agreed, some did not. She turned toward Evan, studying him like a puzzle that refused to fit. "You saved a power tower. You helped villages. That is good. But power does not give you the right to break the law." Evan's voice was calm when he answered. "Law does not give you the right to break people." The words struck the air. Like a bell, simple, clear, impossible to swallow quietly. The High Council member continued, ignoring the tremor that crossed the crowd. "Our law says males are public property for the safety of all. That law brought order. It ended wars of dominance and fear." Her hand lifted, pointing at Evan as if he were a tool laid on a table. "You belong to the state. You will be protected, guided, used only when needed. That is your role." The plaza waited. Evan did not shout back. He stepped forward slowly and spoke to the people, not to the council. "I crashed here by accident," he said. "But I stayed by choice, not because I was forced. Not because of law. I stayed because you are people, and people deserve help." He pointed toward the distant farms, toward the workers in the crowd, toward the tired faces near the back. "You do not need to own someone to survive," he said. "You need to believe in yourselves again." His words did not feel like fire. They felt like sunrise. He told them about the broken machines, about the workers who were never taught to fix them, about the tower engineers who were ordered not to think, about the young girl who asked if learning was illegal. "You did not lose your world because men died," Evan said softly. "You began to lose it when freedom died." Silence fell. A deep one. Then a single voice called out from the crowd, "He is not property." Another voice joined. Then another. Then hundreds. Then thousands. The council guards looked at one another, unsure. They had trained for riots, for anger, for violence. They had not trained for people standing tall without weapons and saying no. The oldest councilwoman struck her staff against the floor. "This is chaos." Lyra stepped forward at Evan's side. "No," she said. "This is choice." The Free Circle members were there too, no longer hiding. Engineers, farmers, teachers, students, women from every part of the world. They raised their hands, palms open, showing they carried no threat. "We do not reject safety," Lyra said. "We reject cages." The council tried one last argument. "If he is free, old dangers return," the leader warned. "Old systems, old control." Evan shook his head. "Freedom is not control," he said. "It is responsibility. I will not rule you. I will not own you. I will not let anyone own me. We walk forward together, or nothing works at all." A long moment held the world. Then the oldest council member slowly lowered her staff. She looked tired, deep tired, the kind that comes from holding fear for too many years. She saw children in the crowd. She saw hope where she had once. Expected only obedience. "The law," she said quietly, "was made to protect life." Her eyes lifted to Evan. "It has begun to hurt it." And at last she broke it. "From this day," she declared, voice shaking but firm, "no person shall be property, male or female. All own themselves. All answer to the same law, dignity." The plaza exploded into sound, not wild chaos, but tears, laughter, relief, fierce new strength. People hugged each other. Guards lowered their weapons, and some even smiled through wet eyes. Evan stood very still. Freedom is heavy when it first lands on your shoulders. Lyra touched his arm gently. You changed our world, she whispered. He shook his head. We changed it together. Above them, drones reprogrammed with new orders drifted away harmlessly. The twin moons watched in silence, as if the sky itself respected the moment. But in the far distance, beyond the plains and cities, a faint new signal blinked in the stars. It was not from the council. It was not from this world. Evan turned his eyes upward. The story was not finished yet. The world did not change in one heartbeat, but something inside people did. The plaza slowly emptied after the great decision. Some walked in silence, touching their own hands like they were feeling new skin. Others talked fast, as if afraid the words of freedom might vanish if they did not keep speaking them. Children laughed without knowing why, only feeling the air lighter than before. Evan stood at the edge of the platform and watched. He had seen planets at war, ships on fire, commanders shouting orders. He had never seen this quiet strength. A world learning how to breathe again. Lyra joined him. Now what? She asked. It was not fear in her voice this time. It was something gentler. Hope mixed with responsibility. Now, Evan said, we work. They worked. Days passed, not calm, but honest. Arguments broke out in councils and homes. Old rules were questioned. New ones were written slowly, carefully, like stones placed. Across a river, some people were afraid. Freedom can feel like standing at the edge of a wide sky. Others were excited. They had waited years for this. Evan did not sit on a throne or behind a desk. He fixed machines. He taught. He listened. Women who had once been told, do not touch that. It is not your place. Learn to open engines and speak in rooms that used to be closed to them. The free circle no longer had to hide. They became teachers, builders, bridge makers between those who feared change and those who ran toward it. The old council did not vanish either. Some stepped down with quiet dignity. Others stayed and learned how to lead without controlling. They were not monsters, only people who had been afraid too long. Every night, Evan looked at the sky, not searching for rescue anymore, just thinking. He had friends here now. A home of sorts, a purpose bigger than survival. He could leave when his ship was rebuilt. But he no longer knew if he wanted to. One evening, he was walking along a high balcony above the city. The twin moons glowed bright, painting silver lines. On every roof, lights filled the towers like fireflies caught in glass. The city did not feel like a cage anymore. It felt alive. Lyra joined him, quietly as always. You could stay, she said, reading his thoughts without asking. No one would hold you. No one would own you. You would simply belong. He smiled slightly. Or I could go home. Yes, she said, you could. Neither pushed the answer. They simply stood side by side. Two people who had helped crack open the future, watching it unfold below them. Then the sky changed. At first, it was only a faint pulse. A small flashing star that did not move like other stars. Then it grew brighter, sharper. A signal. A calling. Not random space noise, not nature. A ship. Evan's breath caught. He knew that pattern. Not the exact signature, but the language of it. Someone up there was looking. Someone was sending coordinated bursts, not to everyone, but to this planet specifically. Lyra followed his gaze, her face turning serious. Is it your people? She asked. He listened to the rhythm of the light like listening to a heartbeat through metal. Maybe, he said. Maybe not. Another pulse came, longer, heavier, almost like a knock on a door. The city noticed. Towers dimmed slightly, as power rerouted to long silent communication arrays. Old systems woke like ancient animals stretching after deep sleep. Drones rose into the air, not in attack formation, but in curiosity. Messages began to scroll across screens. Unknown vessel high orbit waiting for RESPON. See, the world had only just learned to stand on its own feet. And now the universe was at the door. Lyra spoke softly. but there was iron under the softness. Whoever they are, they will find a different planet than the one that existed before you crashed. Evan nodded. Double quotes, yes, he said. And they will find a different man then. The one who crashed. He thought of two possibilities. If it was human, then others had survived somewhere, and they would have questions about this world with no men. This world learning freedom after fear. If it was not human, then new dangers or new friends waited. Among the stars, the council, now reformed, quieter, humbler, sent a single message upward. It said only, "We are ready to talk." Evan felt the weight of those words, ready to talk, not to obey. Not to beg. Not to fight blindly. To talk, as equals. Wind moved across the balcony. The signal above pulsed again, closer now, like footsteps approaching from the darkness of space. Engines whispered beyond the sky. Lyra looked at him. "If it is your people, what will you tell them?" Evan did not answer at once. He looked out at the world that had tried to own him, then freed him, then walked beside him into something new. "I will tell them," he said at last, "that humanity is still learning. And that is our greatest strength." Above the clouds, something vast finally broke through the upper atmosphere. Hidden but real, a shadow against the stars. The story of one man on a world with no men had ended. Larger story had just opened its eyes.